Welcome back to another stacked podcast interview. And with me today, I have I'm going to say the mind behind everything that's cool at MuscleTech, Raza, the head of innovation at the Powerhouse brand. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Shane. Always good to talk shop, talk products, and you're right. I got the best job in the business, so I can't wait to share kind of what we've been working on.
So I'm going to jump straight into obviously creatine peptide, recovery peptide, two of I would say, the biggest innovations we've seen out of you guys since obviously the DL185. Obviously, that was renamed recently to go in line with this whole peptide series.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, my first question, as soon as I saw these or even heard about them, was this kind of series planned? Like when you did the first one, were these other two kind of intended, or even you had intended to do more, or did it just kind of unfold when you saw that everything fit as well as you did with these latest two?
It's always part. It was part of the vision. It was definitely part of the vision. But like when you're innovating, you never know how something is going to be received. So although you got the vision, you're ready for it, and then you just got to see, okay, is this going to hit? Is this going to land? And if it does, then okay, we're definitely going to double down and kind of continue. So what I say is the vision of it, absolutely. In terms of the timing, like that wasn't necessarily firmed up. It was like we're going to get the peptide 185, and I'm so proud of what we did, as a business, launching this product, because it was like true innovation, right? It was because peptides are special, right? I think it's
Yeah.
important almost to even talk to people like, what are peptides? The one thing what I've been hearing about and from talking to people, like they're hearing the name peptide so much, but they're not necessarily understanding what's special about them. And so what I've been telling people is, peptides are super special because like they have these specific signals for your body, right? So when we started with the muscle peptide 185, it was, what is the most powerful signal for, protein synthesis, protein building, which leads to muscle growth, right? And that was, the DL185 dileucine peptide. Started there, but when we came up with that vision, it was like, okay, well, what sort of the master signal or switch to either activate or sort of turn something off to some extent that then leads to a benefit. And so that's when we started thinking of all these other categories. And I think the need states like the creatine, the recovery, we wanted to do them. In some cases, it was like, what's the right peptide? What's the right formula? And those are things that may have evolved over time.
Yeah, so you did, like I said, creatine peptide, recovery peptide. Do you mind going into a bit about, I mean, either one first, whichever
Yeah.
order, but like, because obviously, I like the fact that creatine hit at just the right time with the creatine category kind of just finding new ways every single week. But like you're going into specifically what helps separate it from your standard creatine or your
Yeah.
standalone creatine.
Yeah. And it's interesting. Like for us, who've been in the industry for so long, and hearing people talk about creatine, it's like, yes, finally everyone's talking about it. And we firmly believe, that everybody's going to be on creatine. We feel that, and I think we're getting a step closer. And as we were thinking about that, when we were coming up with this, it was like, okay, well, we've got some really great products in our lineup, right? Like we've got the straight fill creatines, we've got things like Cell Tech, right, that already have a great benefit, got great efficacy, great science. Where's the science going? A lot of it is around, sort of like the cognition. It's like more than muscle. There's the muscle benefits. There's some of the, the ATP, strength, muscle contraction benefits, but it's like this cognition. It's this bone health. And we really leaned into the cognition piece with it. So it's about muscle, cognition. And then with creatine, it's like, I think, a big part of innovation is when something works well, and everybody should be on it, it's kind of like there's these refinements. What can you do to improve the experience for the consumer? How it mixes, whatever they're mixing it with, right? If they're mixing it with their protein, they're mixing it with their juices. And one of the technologies that happened to be a peptide was when you combine it with whey, right? So you get this peptide complex. It's essentially designed to improve the way it absorbs, the way it mixes, and the way it absorbs. So you get this better uptake. The other element of having it attached to a whey peptide is that whey peptides are insulinogenic. So you're having that insulin response, which also helps with uptake. And then you combine it with creatine mono, which is already great. So we wanted to go for a high dose, but we did a mix. So it's a 6 gram total blend. Half is creatine mono, the other half is these creatine peptides. So like that's the creatine complex of it. And then over and above that, it was tyrosine and theanine, right? So it's like, okay, what's a great amino acid, 1 gram of tyrosine that has been shown to increase neurotransmitters, right? That's sort of dopaminergic, that has some good science around mood. And then theanine, I've always loved theanine as an ingredient. It's got this mental clarity, mental focus component. So when you have that together, it just helps dial it in. And I personally love to just literally start my morning with this. So I take other creatine products throughout the day, but I love taking this first thing in the day. Or if you've just taken a lot of stims and post-workout, you want to get your creatine, but also like sort of that additional sort of, you don't want to just be too stimmed later on when you're not actually in the gym. It's a good product to kind of take after. So I think it's an ideal stack. And I think what we're doing is we're also opening it to just a lot of other consumers and a lot of flexibility with stacking.
It's interesting because I know the formula, and I remember seeing the nootropic side to it. It only just occurred to me that you're leaning into that kind of resurgence, the emergence of the whole cognitive side to creatine, that it makes more sense to me now that I'm like, okay, yeah, I see why you did that now. I don't know why I thought originally. I think it was just like a nootropic side because again, usually you mix it pre, post. That makes a lot more sense now. I really liked the pip form and then the creatine monohydrate combination anyway. But yeah, and I also like that you separated it out because again, you have bulk creatine, you have the Celtic, the legendary Celtic with the carbs, and so I guess it kind of it makes sense that you separate it out as much as you did, and then found that cognition nootropic side. But I guess then from there we can go on to the next one, which is obviously the peptide strong recovery peptides.
Yeah. So then got the peptide 144, recovery peptide 144. You see there, this, what I love about this is, so it's a combination to exactly that, to the PeptiStrong. So 2.4 grams of the PeptiStrong, which is the AI discovered peptide. And then what we did is we combined it with HMB. And that combination is really unique. So you got great science behind the PeptiStrong. In fact, that it helps with muscle endurance. It's been shown to help with power output, strength. HMB's got a large body of research around it being anti-catabolic, helping with muscle recovery. But there was this unique emerging research that when we were talking with the supplier, that showed that actually the combination of the two was shown to be synergistic and better than either ingredient alone. And to me, HMB is one of my favorite ingredients. I recommend it to all family and friends. I've used it. I've always used it because when I think of the ultimate stack, right? It doesn't matter who you are. When you train and you exercise, especially when you're, in a calorie restrained type of status, when you're dieting, or even overtraining, if you're, highly active in sports, our bodies are always in a state of either protein synthesis or protein breakdown, right? And depending on your activity level, it may go one way versus the other. So post-workout, you elevate both. A lot of people don't realize that, but you do elevate both, but you elevate protein building more. So, you take something like the muscle peptide 1A5 with the dileucine, and you amplify the anabolic response. Okay, so that additionally helps you get better results. When you take it with something like the recovery protein, what you're then doing is you're shutting down. First of all, you're helping decrease markers of muscle damage, like 3-methylhistidine, and the anti-catabolic pathway. And the way I describe it to people, it's like, imagine a tub. Now you turn on the faucet, right? That's the protein synthesis. But if you don't plug or that drain, right, you're still losing. You're still losing water. So when you take the combination together, I firmly believe this is the ideal and most effective sort of legal stack, right, that you can take. And then, of course, combine it with creatine, which works through an independent mechanism, right, through ATP, to help with both increasing, the rate at which you contract your muscles, helps with strength, and helps with muscle gains over time. To me, it's like, that is like the ultimate stack, the three of those. And that was the vision and how it would all come together.
So the creatine, peptide, and obviously the recovery, they seem to be the more synergistic of the two. You couldn't necessarily, I mean, you could have one without the other, but like you've built them to kind of complement one another essentially.
Yeah. We were thinking about stacks, right? I think, we talked a lot when you think about, and I always think about a consumer. Not everyone might be able to buy multiple supplements, but if you could, what does that ultimate stack look like? And that's how this was kind of designed. It was using the most leading edge, peptides that are orally bioavailable, safe, right, non-injectable. And how do we bring something that actually has some science behind it, has a rationale, and just hasn't been done before, right? Like those certain combinations.
Did you have, because I mean, it's not necessarily called the peptide series, but that's what I've been referring to it as, I guess, loosely. But did you feel pressure to make the other two include some sort of peptide connection? Because it's like they all come together here.
Yeah, well, so yes and no. I mean, the vision, like going back to like our earlier discussion, the vision was to have more peptides, and it
Okay.
was okay. Is this going to resonate? Because I mean, there's such great. Even if you look at some of the most successful and most effective drugs out there, they're peptides, right? The GLP-1 drugs, they're peptides. Insulin, they're peptides. So we know how powerful the signal is. And by the way, I'm not comparing these to drugs by any means.
Yeah.
It's just how, even if you can find something found in nature that's a peptide, it has a very strong signal in your body. So have the vision there, and that's like, okay, well, now what do we have that are the most effective, safe, compliant, research-backed peptides for all these different need states? And there's more stuff I'm working on I can't get into just yet. But that vision is bigger than just these three, but these we believed were some of the most important to get out there, just no matter, whoever someone is, whether they were, extra in the gym, playing sports, just trying to hold on to as much muscle, kind of wherever you are in your fitness journey, these can help people. And this is kind of like the stack, sort of the modern stack that we'd recommend.
I mean, I'm not going to dig too deep into it, but you did just say that there's going to be more, not necessarily like these, but with the peptide theme to them. Is that correct?
Did I say that? Yeah. Yeah, there is there's more coming. Again, it's like, listen, I literally do have the best job, because like my job is to make sure we are at the forefront of innovation always. And I always feel like my job's never done. So once we've launched something, I'm already on to the next thing.
Yeah.
Okay, what's next? And you're always kind of recreating. And I hope these do really well, because I believe firmly there's just great science, great benefits, and they're part of my protocol. But we're not going to stop there. So there's already more we're thinking about.
Interesting. Because as soon as I saw the three, again, when I first started Stack, we had Clear Kick, Allure Kick, and Gag
Right.
Kick. Like immediately, and you had the leucine there, you had the creatine there, and I was like, this has to feel quite nostalgic that you've done these three, very similar fashion, and it's like a nice set to what I think is like 16, 17 years ago.
Yeah, yeah, it's there's one thing launching one product, and then there's one where it's like launching sort of like a protocol, right? And a stack of multiple supplements, and that's that's what our hope is for the consumers, right? We're not just launching a product to get out there. It's like, how do we help people elevate their routines, right, with the next gen supplements, the most effective supplements. And this, like I said, there's a lot more coming down the pipe, but I'm very, very proud of what we got coming right now.
Damn, yeah, yeah. No, that's like I said. Well, as soon as we mentioned it, it was like again, it just brought back the whole stack, and then obviously in between you had the phosphor clear and plasma muscle, and
Oh yeah.
see, I immediately thought I was like, yeah, that makes sense. They do the muscle builders in threes. This has kind of been a somewhat, I guess, I can't say theme because it's only happened on two other occasions, but like, and it just kind of rolled out with these three, and I was like, man. But then knowing there's more coming, I guess there's a little bit more to it. But
Yeah. Yeah, the
and you
three
guys,
three might be just a coincidence. I wasn't necessarily thinking about the
that
magic
wasn't
numbers. Yeah.
that wasn't intended.
No, no, no. It was just
Oh
the
wow,
ideas. No, it was less about numbers, but this felt, and like I said, there's more coming, so it's definitely not about three. It just it's 185, and I'm like, as someone who's been innovating, and you always want the innovations to stick, especially the stuff that are really breakthrough, right? That like Peptide 185, but you don't know. The reality is you don't know
yeah,
consumer adoption, how they're going to adopt and trial, but the demand is like we had a hard time keeping up, right? And it's a great problem to have. At the same time, you want to make sure consumers are always being able to get access to your products. So we worked on that. Consumers should be able to get it now, without any issues. That said, it also let us know, okay, well, this is also now resonating with consumers. They do care about the science. It's not just about, hey, what's the next pre. They also want new and advanced stuff that are going to help, with everything from muscle to strength gains, and I just had fun with it, right? Just doing what my team and I love to do. It's like uncover the most science-backed performance enhancing supplements. So we've done.
because you had a lot of that like early 2010s, I think, and then
Yeah.
like Aplodan, anabolic halo, all of that was still a little more like amino based. You
Yep.
had those. I still remember what was was the Anatol piece. Was it P70?
Oh
I
yeah,
think
you're
that
going
was
way
the name.
back. Yeah, no, you get good memory. Yeah, the Anator, and that was a very like that was a high science, like sort of complicated story, but it was like about leucine, creatine, and a few different things. So you're right. This is going back to the science, like being very very technical, but then like with like, I'll give an example with the peptide 185. When I start talking with the inventors, with the team, and my friends like Sean Wells and the Ralph Yeagers and stuff, and we were talking about it. It was before even we had some of the human clinical research, but it was like mechanistically. Here's now where I geek out a little bit, and I was like, well, this makes perfect sense. Like, we know, we've always thought of leucine as sort of that anabolic trigger. What happens is when you have a dipeptide and when you have a tripeptide, and there were some learnings, because what was uncovered was the tripeptide wasn't efficacious, the dipeptide was, right? So like you don't know what's going to happen once you actually put it to the test, even if theoretically it makes sense. But thankfully the dipeptide, there was something to it, and then when it went head to head against leucine, right, we're seeing 159% greater protein synthesis, right, versus just 60%. So it's like those incremental benefits. And then we went ahead, we studied it, and again, we research. We not only do we research everything, we test everything ourselves. We test everything on ourselves, literally. I try everything, and we then went and did a human clinical study at the MuscleTech Metabolism sports science lab in combination with essential amino acids. And when we combined, the peptide 185 with EAAs, like the results were off the charts. Like it is something that I've never seen. Like we're talking more than, 7x in terms of the protein synthesis, right? So it was just really, really remarkable. And now I can say that, we're helping lots of people get phenomenal results. And we're helping people that have trained for a long time get results. So I think that actually speaks a lot of volumes.
Yeah, I think that's always been the signature of MuscleTech though. Like you innovate these supplements that don't necessarily fit a category that are common, like a pre-workout, an amino, or hydration. Like you have these things that sit outside of it, but have their reason, right? And I think that's what these three are. Even though creatine, I feel, falls into it,
Yeah.
the mindset behind it and what's in it is definitely not your standard creatine. I would say it's almost a muscle builder that has creatine as a base. And I think that's just one of the core things that you guys, like you said, have always been about, and that hunting and finding things rather than a lot of what we see today, where it's kind of the same thing, different shape and form from competitors. So I really liked that. Yeah, it's not that it's getting back, but it's almost more prominent now with a lot of these, and then it even seems like everything else you have, whatever you have coming, I'm sure will be as exciting.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. No, I appreciate the feedback, and that's exactly right. You're going to see us entering, the most innovative era, and we've got a great history of things that we've done, but I think now we're actually just taking it to another level because there's just so many advances again, right? And we're leading the way on that. Whether it's peptides, whether it's our new, plasma BCAs and protein and what we're doing on that side. There's so much that there's so many opportunities to create new products and outside of just some of the same categories.
Well, it sounds like, because again, we just saw the plasma BCA today. I think we have it going up today or something, along with the plasma whey and stack pre. Um, yeah, I think we're probably going to have you back on. I think, especially with what sounds like to be the more peptide supplements, and I really like digging into those mostly because, again, they are a little more than your standard supplement, or not a little more. They're a lot more, and sometimes, as you were saying earlier, people like to stack supplements. We all do, and usually it's a puzzle that fits together. But when you have something that you don't usually buy,
Yeah.
it's hard to figure out where it fits. So I think having these sort of explanations on things that you may not necessarily have a slot for, it can help you realize, oh, this is specifically this helps this area, this helps that. So I appreciate you kind of coming on once again and just breaking down the latest you got.
You got it. Anytime. I really firmly believe, the future of supplements does involve peptides and a lot of the new technologies that we're looking at. And yeah, anytime I can come here, share what we're working on, and love you always taking me down memory lane too on some of the new, the previous launches that we've done. It's always a good reminder of the history of innovation, and never settle. Right? We've got this great history, but got to keep innovating, keep going. And a lot of these new products, they can be, completely be stacked, right, with someone's someone's
Yeah.
protein, but at the same time, provide something new and novel they haven't tried that has science that's going to help elevate the results. And that's what we're here to do.
No, I think you summed it up perfectly. And yeah, thank you for taking the time.
Thanks, Shane. Appreciate it.